Hey family, it is Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Listen, if you've been tasked with putting together a presentation for a meeting or you're responsible for culminating a group of people and you want to make it engaging, you are in the right place. We're going to talk about how you do that right after we get back from today's intro. You are excellence. Your mind is of excellence. Your visions are of excellence. Your unique superpower is nothing short of excellence. You amplify a voice of excellence. Your contribution to this world will be of excellence. You will achieve your highest goals and desires with excellence. Excellence in everything, every time. It is Tuesday. I'm so glad that you're here. Happy Tuesday. I'm Linnita Hosten for those of you who I have not yet met. And I have the privilege of traveling the country as a national edutainer. This October 13th marks it my 10th year doing this work. And if one thing I have not learned, that is how to make presentations and messages that you're presenting, how to make them engaging. So I'm excited to share that tonight. If you're watching live, and I see my cousin is in the house, I love you too. Thank you for watching us tonight. If you're watching live, let me know that you're here because so many of you stopped by. Let me give you your flowers for joining us. And if you happen to catch the replay, you can type in #replay. Now, if you know somebody who gives presentations at work and you know they could use a little grooming, just go ahead and send this to them. You can share it with them. You can also like and subscribe if you're watching from YouTube to make sure you are continually updated on the content that we're putting out. So I'm excited about tonight's topic because it's like my bread and butter. So whatever questions that you have, please share them. I do monitor the comments and I'm excited to see what you got to say. While I have your attention, this Friday, I'm so excited about this. This Friday, I am doing my first beginner's public speaking class. We have one seat left. Registration is closed. Sorry, but I just wanted to tell you that I wrote out the agenda of what we're going to work on. We're going to be working on project focus, and they're actually going to be doing the activity, so it's not a lot of lecture, but I'm excited, and I can't wait for you to hear what they say about it. So it is in person, but if you want to join virtually, there are still virtual tickets left. You can go to workwithlinnita.com really quickly. We're going to do activities around articulation and pronunciation. We're going to address the fears of public speaking, which is called glossophobia. We're also going to talk about ways and tips to have an executive presence by way of confidence when speaking and standing in front of a crowd. And then we definitely deep diving into nonverbal communication because that is where the money resides. That's where the money resides. Hey, Patrina, so good to see you. Thank you for stopping by. Okay, let's go ahead and jump in because y'all know I don't like to keep y'all long because I keep you long, you don't come back. So I want to share with you 3 ways today that you can make your presentation engaging. And here's the first one. I want you to start with creativity. Typically, this is how meetings start. They start with a roll call. They start with prayer. They start with, okay, we're going to jump into the latest updates. Like, one of the things that makes something engaging is that the people who you are with can't anticipate what's going to happen. So you set up the expectation for them to be ready to receive something different. So you can start off the meeting creatively. So it might look like, I'll give you some examples of this, and then I have a video that I want to show you. But it might look like a Soul Train line. So you saying everybody, nobody comes in. They don't know this, but you have music on and the lead team creates an assembly line with the hands up and you do a Soul Train line entrance into the meeting. If you say, okay, Linnita, that's too extra. Okay, I got some other ideas for you. You can also start the day off with a throwback photo of you if you're leading or someone on your staff or the lead team, or you ask people to submit their baby photos and then you guess who. But find a creative way to get the juices flowing. And I've got some other activities too. I want you to take a look at this one. So this is an activity in which you don't have to use a shoe, but the goal is that they're not doing what you would normally do in the meeting. So I've seen people, instead of putting the shoe in the middle, they've placed a cup, or you can place a pin, but you would line people up same way you would do for a Soul Train line. And then you would call out a command. And that video was head, shoulders, knees, shoe, or it could be head, shoulders, knees, pencil. But the goal is that it's creative and it has nothing to do with why you're meeting. When I transitioned churches this year, one of the ways that the leadership team that I'm on, that we start our meetings, we start with leadership development. And it's typically very creative. We never know how it's going to start. Sometimes it starts with a food activity. You just never know what to anticipate. So it's actually something I look forward to. And perhaps I subconsciously stole it from that. But here's another example that you may find interesting. Now, this is definitely a little bit more way on the creative side.
Is called up or down. One team is trying to flip the cups up, and the other team is trying to flip the cups down. Whichever team has the most at the end of the time wins the round. If you want to add variety, you can have a third team trying to lay the cups on their side.
So hear me out now. I know you saw that the people in that video were young, but we all have an inner child in us. Somehow, in some way, as we get older, we forget that there is a childlike sense energy in all of us. So don't fear that people are too old or they're not going to do that. You never know until you try. And as a leader, we're responsible for creating the energy in the room. That's my number one rule whenever I'm speaking. I'm responsible for creating the energy in the room. So if I come in the room and the room is stale, people are half asleep, people have the itis, as the person whom is asking for the eyes and ears of people who are attending, it's my job to create the energy in the room. These are just some ways you can do that. You can take those cups and place them on a table if you fear people have back issues or reach mobility limitations. You can modify it, but the goal is that it's creative and it has absolutely sometimes nothing. You can make it parallel, but it doesn't have to relate to what you're doing. And I wanted to emphasize that. Hey, Chanel, good to see you. Happy Tuesday. Always good when family comes back. So that's the first one. And it's very relevant to the second one, which is to move your audience. When you think about it, when people come to a presentation, they have the expectation of being stationary. They have the expectation that you will lecture them. They have the expectation that you will talk and they will likely be disengaged, uninterested, unless it directly impacts them. So I always say, how can you move them? So I remember one time I was at a women's conference and they put me in a room and it was set up what you would call like conference style, meaning there are rows. I'll show you an example of this. Or theater style might be a better way to say it. So this is theater style where people are just facing forward and there are rows of chairs. Well, I modified the room to a U shape. I took away the tables and changed the chairs. You have the control to adjust the setting of the room. If that requires you to get in a little early or to get insight about the space that you're using, do that. But don't assume because the room is set up a way that it has to be that way. So I always ask on the front end where I'm going, even if this is informal, what is the room setup going to be? Because if I'm responsible for creating the energy, part of that energy is created by the seating arrangement. So those are small changes that you can make. So the U shape creates like communal. It allows everyone to see each other. I would say the oval definitely creates like it gives you a point of reference. You can stand in the middle and teach. You can also bring other people inside of the middle to demonstrate, but everybody is seen and everybody's voice kind of counts. Now, when you have those rounds like this one over here, that means you have small communities within a big community. So thinking about how can you leverage their seating, maybe it's activities amongst the table or having people switch tables. But again, you have that ability when you are leading something. So how can you modify it to fit your goal? Then there's boardroom style, which is very similar to the oval. And then the informal style, this is the kind I really don't like because there's way too much space here. Too much space in between everything. So you could put the tables out and create a U shape with the tables. But literally, you have the ability to move the room. Now, if the seats are stationary and they don't move, you can physically move your audience. So I know sometimes people, when you say, all right, I need everybody to stand up. Well, maybe you don't say that. Maybe you turn on music and you say, on the count of 3, I want you to dance like you have vacation tomorrow, or dance like you on Jamaica's island. And you turn on reggae. But you do something that forces them to move. You might say, on the count of 3, I want you to grab the person next to you and do whatever your heart do whatever your body reacts to when this beat drops. But get them out of their seat. So you can do a relay race. You can have people come up and do an activity in front of you. You can have everybody form a circle, like come up out of their stationary seats. So find a way to move them physically. So I have this activity that I do, and then I literally have um, I place sticky notes underneath random seats in the room. And so whomever has a sticky note at that time, I'll say, okay, I want you to look under your seat. And it creates a sense of excitement because people don't know like what's under there. And then the person who gets it was like, oh my gosh, I got it. It's me. And then I use them. So they're the one moving. You can also do it by birthday. You can do it by what you're wearing. You can do it by how many years you've been, like the most senior or the least senior person in the room. But you can find a way to either move them by identifying them by a thing, or move everybody by their seating arrangement and or by physically engaging them in some type of movement. And if you try any of these, I want you to jump in and say that. I would love to know what you've tried. Okay, so number 3, I think that nothing that you say matter until you share with people why it matters to them. I'm big on always having a heart-filled or heartful experience. So I'm looking for an emotional connection in everything. And people hit things hit people differently. So depending on the environment that you're in, why does it matter, or why should they care about the information that you're presenting? How can you tie it into their own personal goals? How can you tie it into how that affects their family? Or how can you tie it into the possibility of growth that they personally have? So always making that connection and never allowing people to do it on their own. And when we don't do that, you have people who are sitting in a room and they're saying to themselves, why do I care about that? Or why does that matter to me? And literally, a girlfriend of mine who works in a nonprofit, they're going through their annual training. And she mentioned to me today that everything that they're talking about for the entire week, 9 to 5, are all about rules and metrics and more so of the infrastructure of the organization. And it has nothing to do with the people or how they feel or their work or skills to equip them with their work. So she's having a hard time making a connection. She's also a highly emotional person in a good way, not like overly emotional and expressing, but like I desire to have a closer connection or depth to relationships. So when you have those two different kinds of people, you have a very logical people who just need to know the why and the what. You can skip the emotion, but then you have those people who they have a very emotional side where they need to know not just the why and the what, but like how their role matters. That connection to them matters. We're responsible for making that connection for them. So I'll give you an example of how you can do that. You can make an emotional appeal by sharing your personal story. You can talk about why this work impacts you, or something in your childhood that relates back to the work that you're doing or the topic that you're teaching on. So let's say I was doing a training on music therapy. Maybe I worked for Deloitte, and I was doing a presentation. My supervisor asked me to do a presentation on how music impacts your mood for the day. This is what I would do if I were an employee at Deloitte. Let me back up. This is what most people would do. They would have a PowerPoint presentation, and then they would have on the first slide, music, therapy, and your everyday work life. It would just be the words. And on the next slide, there would probably be about 5 bullets and nothing else. And then they would talk about why music therapy and your work life can shift or how it can affect that. This is what I would do. I would have a slide deck. On the first slide, I would have an image of someone like listening to trap music. Even if I worked in a diverse place, I would have an image of a person listening to Elton John and Madonna. And I would have the music lowly playing in the background. And I would ask the group, if this song resonates with your generation, raise your hand. Like before I say anything. So after I get them to do that, I may come back and say, now close your eyes. And I want you to think about that song that when you were a teenager, or something to the effect of like, it made you think about your first love or your first crush. And when you hear that song, it reminds you of them. Even if you're married, even if you hate their guts, what's that song? That's an emotional connection. So they'll open their eyes and they'll raise their hand and they'll say, okay, I remember, maybe say, I remember, boy, after we kissed, I can only think about your lips. That would be Alicia Keys. And I would ask them to sing it out loud. They would probably turn red and orange. But one person would be brave enough to say it. And then I would go into how music affects your workday. So you see how instead of just jumping right in, you building that connection slowly with your group. And yes, this is going to take time, but that matters if you want them to listen. So don't feel like you're using too much time not saying anything. You're using too much time to connect with them so that it resonates. If when you finish, what was heard was not absorbed and or doesn't have a strong call to action, you were not effective. So sometimes being effective looks like a slow build to a big impact. So don't fear like, okay, I'm taking up too much time being not saying everything. So I just wanted to keep that in mind. Hey, Latoya, happy Tuesday. Thank you for stopping by. So excited about Friday. And I'll be honest, y'all, this is not my first event, but this is the first one for adults only. And it's the first one where I am the sole person speaking. I'm teaching the whole day. And I plan to be in flat shoes and I plan to be well rested. Let's just say that. But I am excited, but I know I'm going to be sweating and very tired at the end of the day. Very, very tired. So making that emotional connection when you're putting together your presentation, it matters. Here's the last one. And I know most people don't do this, but you got to map out the time that you're going to spend. When a person says, hey, you're going to have 15 minutes to do your presentation. Some people will say, oh my God, that's a lot of time. I don't know what in the world I would say in 15 minutes. So then you start pulling out things to fill the time out. I guess I'll just tell them a few updates. I guess I'll just tell them what we were working on. I guess I'll just tell them like good news. But think strategically. Remember, people are sedentary. They have an expectation that you likely be redundant and or say something that is not going to keep their attention. They have an expectation. So if you're looking to make something engaging, your job is to disappoint their expectation of kind of being low. And so I wrote an example of how you can map out your time. So let's say you have an hour, and this is an hour for the entire meeting, not just for your speaking part, but your speaking part is 20 minutes. So I say here, you start off at 1:30. So you start off with development. That's for 5 minutes. It could look differently. You can talk about something or teach them a topic or go over a skill set that you feel like they need to know. Maybe you don't teach it. You show a YouTube video. Maybe you have a guest Skyped in and they do the development. Those are just some examples. And then you move them by way of an activity. Maybe you tie 2 pieces of bubble gum under the chair and paper, of course. Maybe you do 2 sticky notes. Maybe you can do anything to move them out of their seats or to get them talking. So maybe they're not physically moving, but their lips and hands are where they are. And then maybe you might shift to beginning to start the meeting. Maybe you do your report outs if people have updates. So if you see this kind of mimics my keynote style. I call it content commercial break, so that people are not overwhelmed with a overload of information by way of lectures. So you lecture them, you let them have fun. You lecture them, you give them a break. So this is a very similar format. And so after the report out, you might do a comedy break. This could look like the top 5 memes that are trending today. Like I said, even if you are in a professional space, everybody wants to laugh. I don't know how we strip away the human element when we get into professional spaces. People need the outlet. I think the type of video that you show does matter. Shouldn't have profanity. People should be fully dressed. Like, it should be appropriate. But there is a place for humor in professional spaces. So it could be a TikTok. It could be an inspirational TikTok. It could be a funny TikTok of a parenting. Just find a way to give that comic relief. It's a great way to break up the monotony of a meeting. It's also a great way to come back after lunch. So you can do that. And then maybe you go into the meat and bones of your meeting. So that's like 20 minutes. Remember, it's hard to be engaging if you have not connected your group. So you can't, this is how people do connection nowadays. We're gonna start with the icebreaker. If you're wearing red, go to the right. If you're wearing left, go to the left. Like, I feel like that's ineffective. Find a way to build organic connection and then move people into activity and then talk to them. That's just my personal take. I would love to hear your opinion about that. If you found another technique that you use, please share it. Please share it. Hey JP, thank you for stopping by. So excited. Everybody is wishing their congratulations on this weekend. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to definitely giving it my all. Y'all know that's my motto: excellence in everything. Every time. Hey Janet, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate that. I haven't seen you in a while, so it's good to see your face. And yes, Chanel, you can still purchase tickets. We have one seat left for in person. And the virtual admission is open up until tomorrow if you want to join virtually. Hey, Nell, thank you for stopping by. Nell helps me with a lot of things on the back end, so she's helping me with some last minute things for the conference. Definitely appreciate your support with that. Okay, so map out your time. 10 minutes will go by fast if you have not planned what you're going to say. And here's the thing. If you don't catch a person in the first 45 seconds, when you have their attention, you won't win it back. And when a person begins to pick up their phone, it is hard to get them back. Our job is to maintain their attention for the duration of the time that we have them in front of us. And so you do that by creating the energy in the room when you very first begin. We talked about how you can have a creative start to your meeting. And there are so many other ways. You can Google them, you can YouTube them, but do something that's unrelated to the topic. I think it would be a great way to introduce it. We also talked about moving your audience, whether that be the way that they're seated or physically moving them for an activity. And if you have participants who have mobility challenges, keep that in mind. If you do not know an audience's mobility, you can ask. You can say, everybody close your eyes, raise your hand if you feel comfortable with standing, jumping, running today. And if everybody raises their hand, then you have the green light. But I always do something to survey the group and don't assume just based on how people look that they may have the ability or have the mobility. So that's definitely something you want to keep in mind. Yes, organic activities are great for sure. So excited about the Tickle Pink event coming up and Felicia stopping by. We're excited about that. We're going to be talking about it right after this week coming up. And you'll have a chance to join us. So those are the methods to have a engaging presentation. So I'm going to tell you really quickly before we wrap up, some things that kills me that I see that is not engaging. If you start the meeting off yelling because you're attempting to take your tone, you want your tone to create the energy for you, that's a no-no. There are some people who have sound sensitivity. So you yelling, okay, everybody, let's go. We're going to have fun. I just have an alternative to that. If you want to create that energy, play a song that does that for you. If you want to create that energy, do an activity that does that. But yelling, I just want us to leave that back into 2023. Okay, let me give you some other ones. When the activity that you plan for the group, you haven't fully flushed out the instructions. So we spend the bulk of the time getting clarity about what we're supposed to do and where team's supposed to go because you didn't think that through. The execution of the activities totally impacts how effective you are in communicating its purpose. So you really have to think through, if I only have this many people, if they're an odd number, think through that. That's why it's important to write it down. So the activities that I have planned for Friday in Stage Power Intensive, I've written them down. I also have thought through how to support the virtual attendees, what questions might come up, the physical limitations in the room. You literally have to think through that because that impacts your engagement. If people feel like you're unprepared, that kind of like put a sting on it. So we want you to, write that out and think through it thoroughly. The last thing that I want to share is that when we spend too much time talking about ourselves, about how we feel and how we did it and what happened when we did it. People want to be included. So find a way to infuse them in your presentation. So you may call or ask anyone, do they want to share a story? Tell some other people's stories. Tell someone on your team's story. Or tell a story that a team member shared with you that you know they wouldn't mind you sharing again. But when we are talking too much about ourselves, sometimes that's a turnoff. And so being conscientious about that too. Even if your story is relevant to the activity, keep it brief. The goal is not about us. It's about them and their experience and keeping them the focus. And so we keep them the focus when we have visuals. When we have visuals that are not just words, but photos. When we have activities, because not every learner is visually, like they learn visually. Some of them are tactile. They got to touch something. They got to be involved in a process. And we also keep them in mind when we have different types of sound. So if you have music, if you have videos, if you have other people speaking, and if you have a variation of tones going on throughout the day, you want to keep them in mind. I always say, I'm not the focus when people invite me in. My job when I'm hired is to ask the event planner, what is the goal? And it's to execute. Your goal has nothing to do with me. I may tell a few stories, but it has everything to do with the people in the room. So don't steal the shine of the people who you've been asked to uplift and empower. Any questions? Any questions? Hey, Eric. Eric says, great info. Definitely need to add to my bag. Appreciate you. I appreciate you. And thank you for stopping by. I hope I added a little fire to your presentations. I hope I added a fire to your presentation. Thank you, JP. Golden is the goal. The golden is the goal. The name of the show is excellence in everything. And that just means not perfection. It's our highest quality of effort when we have the chance. And to be honest, if our capacity is limited at that time, we just give what we can at that capacity. So it's not about perfection. It's just at this time, this is the best that I can do. That's excellence. It's your highest quality of effort at the capacity that you're in. Okay. While you are thinking about your questions, I want to remind you, if you've ever wanted to partner with me, here are 3 ways we can work together. You can bring me in to speak, which is what most of you commonly do. You can hire me to train. If you have a sales team or you have a leadership team and you want them to perfect their presentation or public speaking skills, happy to partner with you to do that. And then finally, if you want a long-term relationship, like you want to put a ring on it, you want to create a long-term partnership or program for your group. Maybe you have an intern program, or you have a new hires program, or you have a junior recruitment pipeline. You want to create out a professional development series, we can partner to do that as well. And you can go over to workwithlinnita.com to get more information about that. You can also send me a DM on any platform, and happy to address your questions. Pastor Oliver is in the house. Good to see you, sis. Thank you for stopping by. What questions do you guys have? What questions do you have? And what did you learn? What questions do you have? If you don't have a question, what did you learn? And while you are typing that, I want to share a story with you. The only time that I've winged something, I've only done this one time, and I remember it so vividly. I would never do it again. I was keynoting. I was the second keynote. I was behind a 15-year-old entrepreneur at the time. Her name was Gabrielle Jordan. She's not 15 anymore, if you know who she is. And it was a girls' empowerment event, but their mentors were theirs in Charles County, maybe about 100 people in the room. My mind told me, when you get there, just say a few things and it'll be fine. Whatever you come up with, speak from your heart. That's what people say, right? And so that's what I was going to do. Well, when Gabrielle got up there, she had a structure to her message. She had a very powerful intro, a very powerful closing. She was making an intentional connection. And clearly, I could see that I was unprepared. There's 2 things here, and I'm going to talk about this in a second. The first one is comparison, but the second thing is preparation. When Gabrielle was talking, I left my seat. I knew she had 20 minutes to speak. I left my seat because I was literally having a mild panic attack. Now, that's the first time I've ever experienced that, where I could not breathe. Like, I felt like my chest was coming out of my shirt. My heart was coming out of my shirt. I had to take deep breaths. And in that moment, I don't know if you know anything about human psychology, human behavior, but there's a fight or flight response that your body has. So either you cannot neurologically, rationally, objectively, logically, you cannot be in a state of panic, worry, anguish. You cannot do that and be objectively and rationally thinking. We just weren't designed to do that. You're going to do one or the other. So while I was panicking, sweating, nervous, I couldn't even think about what I was going to say. So it just made it worse. So long story short, I would end up going back inside, and it was my turn to be introduced. Y'all, I don't even remember what I said that day. I don't even remember. I just remember I was probably up there for about 5 minutes, and it was very insignificant. And after that moment, that was the only time I needed to see what it was like, what it felt like to be unprepared. So the first thing I'll say is that when we are unprepared, we are always looking to see what other people are doing so we can compare what we have. When you're prepared, you have thought through thoroughly about what you have. There's a level of confidence about what you're going to present, that the need to compare, it should almost not even exist, because you're like, that's what's up. I'm glad you have that. I'm excited to share what I have too. And that's how you want to feel. When you don't have anything prepared and you are comparing to someone who may be prepared, it strips away your confidence when it's your goal. It also strips away like your ability to think quick on your feet and to be creative, like in that moment. So you're in the back of your mind, you're thinking about, am I going to do as good as, are they going to like? So you don't have to do that when you're prepared, when you've prepared well. And the second piece is nervousness is natural, but it will be amplified if you're unprepared. You will have a sense of uncontrollable, like sweaty palms under your hair. Some of us are going to have that naturally. Over time, that begins to subside. Like, I don't typically get that sweaty anymore. In the beginning, I did. And I still have nervousness. My heart flutters a little bit. It goes away. But when you're nervous and you're unprepared, it takes a lot longer for that thing to subside. Like, a lot longer. And so I always say preparation is your tool so you can win when you are public speaking. Preparation just looks like practicing what you have planned to share, practicing it aloud. You might not write it out word for word. You might write an outline. I share it with my students today because I teach public speaking. If you want to memorize it, just depends on your level of like memorization. If you want to memorize it, you memorize it in batches. So you start with the intro, you got that down, you add your first point, then you go back, kind of talk through your intro, first point, you got that down, go through your intro, first point, second point. That's one way. You don't have to do that. You can have something in front of you, an iPad, notes, but be careful when you have those things. As soon as you lose track of where you are, it creates a sense of like, unless you're just good at being under pressure, not, freaking out, but it can be a distraction. Just use it cautiously, but that is a way. Practice in front of someone. Practice when you're in the shower. Practice when you're driving. That is the number. I practice every time. 10 years, October 31st, I still practice. I practice for this podcast. I never show up on Tuesday unprepared. I have notes. I've done research every time. And that's why you guys keep coming back. So you want people to feel like that when it's your turn. You want them to feel like, I know what they're going to share is going to empower me. I know what they're going to share is well prepared. It's going to be good. I'm ready to. That's how you want people to be. You get them there by being prepared. Awesome. Hey, Charles, thank you for stopping by. Love that. Hey, Casey. Yes, definitely. Getting those notes, writing it down. And I know you know this, Shamika, but nervousness is natural. Yep. It will be amplified if you're unprepared. Absolutely. Okay, so I didn't see any questions that you guys have. I like to keep it brief. I think that is it. That's all I have for you guys. Yep, that is it. That's all I have. No questions? All right, so I want you to do me a favor. If you're watching live, drop me a heart for Friday. Drop me a heart in the comments for Friday. Stage Power Intensive is my very first beginner's public speaking class. It won't be the last. We'll be opening up a community of those who desire to increase your public speaking skills and making some changes to the podcast too. So stand by. Those changes are coming. If you're not a beginner and you're like, I know that there's something that I can learn, we got something coming for you too. So just stand by and send a prayer up for your girl, that the people who are coming in the room, that they feel a sense of like urgency to develop the skill, even if it's not just to make money. Maybe it's just because I want to prove it to myself that I'm capable. Like that's a win too. I just want to prove to myself that I'm capable and I can be competent in this arena. Like send that prayer up for those that are coming for me on my behalf, if you don't mind. On my behalf, if you don't mind. Thank you so much for your hearts. I appreciate you guys. I see y'all in the comments. Thank you very, 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 very much. Excited about this. I cannot wait, and we will have more. That wraps us up for tonight. I absolutely love you. There is nothing you can do about it. I will see you next Tuesday at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. Bye now. You are excellence. Your mind is of excellence. Your visions are of excellence. Your unique superpower is nothing short of excellence. You amplify a voice of excellence. Your contribution to this world will be of excellence. You will achieve your highest goals and desires with excellence. Excellence in everything, every time.